ShotDeck friends, look at us. We got another Shot Talk, a super exciting one because we've got DP James Friend who's going to talk about All Quiet on the Western Front, which, besides being nominated for 9 Academy Awards, he's already won the BAFTA, won the BSC award, is nominated for an ASC award, nominated himself for an Academy Award, and overall has just created a magnificent piece of filmmaking, of which I was super inspired watching it, had a ton of questions and a ton of things I'd like to sort of talk to James about. I don't think we've ever met, except maybe at the ASC Clubhouse, and I may have forgotten. If we have, I apologize. If we haven't, then we'll see each other soon, hopefully at the ASC Awards in a couple of weeks or next week or something. But yeah, let's talk about this film. First, let me talk about you. Give me just a little backstory on you and how'd you get into this business and how'd you get into becoming a camera person? Give me the liner notes.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I want to know how to get one of those caps.
Oh, that's easy. Trust me, I'll have one for you next weekend.
Yeah, how did I get into it? I've always loved film, always. It was my sort of escapism from when I was a kid, I suppose. And I didn't have entirely the best time at school, not through academia, but for other individuals at school. And I think film was kind of my, my little panic room, I suppose. And yeah, I used to go home every night and watch a movie, and then my parents eventually put a TV in my bedroom with a VHS player or whatever, and I would sort of watch the same films over and over again, and then a DVD player and the same film. And I used to spend all my pocket money on movies every weekend, and I would I'd have a kind of like a playlist to sort of go back to every night. And then at school, I kind of realized. I remember one day I was classically ill of school, and I was watching the telly, and I saw an ILM documentary or a Lucasfilm documentary on the making of Star Wars, and I saw these kind of shots that were so embedded and ingrained in my sort of grey matter, really, at that time, of TIE fighters and X-Wings kind of bursting down, Star Destroyer, trenches. And I thought, like, holy fuck, people actually do this for a living, and then the sort of bubble burst a little bit, but not in a bad way, in a really great way. My brother was a huge sort of inspiration for me, because he's 6 years older than me, so he had this kind of education in this sort of library and of cinema ahead of me, and he was my kind of curator, I suppose. And he was brilliant at such a susceptible age. Really sort of navigating me through, introduced me to sort of Ray Harryhausen and all those kind of incredible filmmakers. And, I grew up with all the classics. But every Sunday and Saturday and whatever was just filled with Indiana Jones and E.T. and, real... nothing out of the ordinary, but super extraordinary at the same time, as a young man.
I had almost the exact same experience, which is my introduction to film was populist films. It's the ones you mentioned: Jaws, E.T., Close Encounters, Raiders, and Star Wars. Like the populist films. It's one of the reasons why I never shrug off populism or the big billion-dollar franchise movies, because they have value, because they're not as easy as they seem, and also they do stick with people in the same way as it's a small film like Breaking Away or Raging Bull or something more artistic, you know.
Well, I think what's a lot can be said about that kind of era is that when I was at that very impressionable age, and I've got a daughter now who's 4, and we showed her ET for the first time the other day, and she's like completely captivated. I mean, completely captivated. And I remember being of that kind of mindset of being, the first time I experienced that and just being enthralled by the entire, and that's the sort of majesty of cinema. And I think that's what kind of enraptured me at that age. And when, like I say, when that bubble burst, but not burst in, I realized that there's actually craftsmen and women that make these wonderful things. You kind of go, well, I want to be Indiana Jones, or I want to be James Bond, or I want to be Luke Skywalker, but what's the closest thing I can get to doing that? And it's a very naive way of thinking, but that's the way a kind of 7-year-old thinks, and
yeah. Well, I remember those early behind the scenes photos of Star Wars. There's like very famously one that's very simple, and they're out on the desert, and it's just a cameraman, a sound man. It's like 5 people and George Lucas. And then you see C-3PO and R2-D2 and Obi-Wan, and you're like, oh, wait a minute. That's the magic of filmmaking. But you also recognize that, like, right, those people standing around, they're actually helping make this thing.
Exactly. And then the best thing is when you read the books, like the the making of Empire Strikes Back, you kind of realize how challenging it really is, and what they kind of had to put up with. But that's kind of what defines us as sort of human beings in to telling all these kind of tales, and almost become sort of fables in this lovely way, but that's kind of how I got into it. But I left school relatively early, and I met a cinematographer who basically said, learn either how to light or get into the camera department. And I wrote to the BBC, and I heard nothing. So I did. I was very sort of on my toes. So I was really trying to impress people and make an effort. So I wanted to join the lighting department, and someone said, well, you've got to be a qualified electrician. So the next day I applied to electrical college and started to do my apprenticeship in electrical installation, which you had to do purely just to work on film sets. And I did my my apprenticeship, and then at the weekends I was working as a spark, as we call it, or a lighting technician.
Yep.
On student grad films and in theatres, because I sort of didn't really know the difference, so I just thought everything all just melded into one. But obviously they're sort of worlds apart. Excuse me. And just any experience I could get, really, of just moving a lamp around and understanding light, the quality of light, and how an audience interprets light, and did many years of of real bad films, to be perfectly honest. People that I'm really proud to be working with at the moment, who I run into on a daily basis, who say, oh God, I worked with you on that how many years ago, and I'm like, oh my God, yeah, of course. And we were running around a forest with sort of buckets of fake blood and a 16mm camera, and light bulbs with tinfoil around them, I mean, with sort of fake werewolf hands, and just real indie stuff. But it was fun. It was really fun. Like, I used to be a little bit ashamed of it a while ago, but now I'm kind of like, well, actually, it's kind of what, it's sort of the fun of getting there, and that's actually what is more fun than the other.
Yeah, listen. I know exactly what you mean, and I always look at that as like that's the journey that got you here, and so the wild success and the sort of accolades and all the things that you've been doing in the last years, that's all part of that. That's part of what made you who you are, and I always love it because I used to always Faden Papamichael's a friend and just a fantastic camera person, and love him. but I used to always say, "Oh yeah, Biodome with Pauly Shore." I'm like, "You survived," and he always gets so pissed off. But I'm always like, "Trust me, I have worse credits." But but the idea that something that seemingly is so trivial, and insignificant, and silly as Biodome leads to somebody who's doing these incredibly both artful and huge, massive films like Indie.
Biodome's a classic. I'm just going to say.
That was probably one of your VHS, just like working your way
100%.
through.
I've
That's
still
right.
got it. I've still got it. I can dig it out for you right now in a minute. Yeah.
There you go. Exactly. So, all right. So you did that, and then, all right. Leading into this film, it seems like, at least from just going through your bio, that Edward Berger, who directed this film, you guys had found a relationship in TV. I think on Patrick Melrose, perhaps, was the first place, or Your Honor, or is that correct?
Yeah. So I was shooting this TV series for ITV or is it PBS in America or in and I had this phone call to say Ed Berger wants to meet you about Patrick Melrose, and I knew the books, and a friend of mine had put me forward for the project, and I was on a night shoot the night before up in Scotland in Stirling, and they said, well, Ed's going to be in London tomorrow morning if you want to go and meet him. So I basically took this overnight train straight from set, completely exhausted, and arrived into sort of Soho and walked into the toilet and sort of splashed water on my face and tried to make myself look presentable. And I met Ed, and obviously sort of left some kind of impression. And then, a couple of days later, I had the message that he wants me to photograph Patrick Melrose, which I was really, excited about doing. And we really hit it off, and it was not a long shoot at all for a 5-part TV, 1 hour TV thing. I think it's like 100 days, so not a lot actually. But we went through 100 days, but in sort of 4 different countries or something stupid. So we really kind of it was a baptism of fire, and then after that he phoned me up and he said, "Do you fancy doing a series in New Orleans or a pilot in New Orleans for Your Honor?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'd absolutely love to." And we jumped at the chance of working with him again, and we kind of really galvanized our relationship on that. I think just it takes one project to sort of do something, and to the point where I'd really consider him a real filmmaking brother. And then after that we became we could sort of finish each other's sentences, kind of thing. And then on that he on Your Honor, at the end of Your Honor, he started sort of just mooting these ideas about All Quiet. And
what stage was it in at that point? He had it in his mind for a while. Was it something that, he was developing for a while?
He's a very open person, and I would like to say, especially for me, but I remember he started mentioning it just sort of one day on set. At the end of the day, and we built this enormous courtroom on the stage, and we were sort of in between setups and waiting for something to happen, a load of extras or essays to sort of be shepherded into the set. And he sort of mentioned it to me, and I thought, oh God, that sounds interesting. And that was the first kind of little seed that was planted in my head. And yeah, he's sort of true to his word. And then he phoned me up. COVID happened. And I was going to go back and shoot more on Your Honor, but I flew home to spend time with my family, and I wasn't allowed back into the US,
right,
for obvious reasons. And then this whole machine of All Quiet sort of started to gear up, and I knew the book because I studied it at school, and we spoke about it, and then he said, which was weirdly like the most obvious thing and the most tasteful thing, but it never occurred to me. He said, "Oh, it's going to be entirely in German," and I don't speak a fucking word of German.
Well, it was literally my number one question. I'm like, hey, do you speak German, and do you now speak German? Or what? But but describe that also as a cinematographer to like make a film in a foreign language.
Well, I was petrified when he said that, but I felt this sort of overwhelming sense of responsibility, because the only thing we spoke about for weeks was just authenticity, and I was always thinking about it in my head because I didn't want to ask about cast because he was. I didn't want to kind of be. I didn't want to pre-visualize too much. I just wanted to pre-visualize the sort of environment. And we knew that we were talking about kids that were kind of unknowns. So I always knew that they were, or sort of young kids. So I knew they were going to be unknowns. And yeah, I as soon as he said that, there was a point of relief, because I realised that the film was going to have a lot more gravity than it ever would have had before. But at the same time, he knew that I didn't really speak a lot of German. I studied it a little bit at school, but being very dyslexic, I was kicked out of German lessons and was given extra English lessons. So I couldn't, I basically bought a German language sort of book and was kind of trying to brush up. And then he phoned me up after we started getting really sort of, pregnant into the process. He phoned me up one day, and I knew he had a very close German collaborator, a cinematographer, and he basically said, "Look, how do you feel about this?" And I said, "Look, I will make it work. I will make it work," because I wanted more than anything to do the film, and I'd reread the book a couple of times in that time period and really fallen in love with the material. And I thought, if this is my stumbling point, I didn't want it to be something that was on my shoulders, because I just didn't. I wouldn't have ever been able to forgive myself. So I kind of said to him, "Look, if you need me to speak German by the time we shoot this, I will take German lessons every day for up until the day I fly out there." And I'd even started looking online about sort of Zoom German lessons with a private tutor and all this kind of stuff, and it became actually sort of, it became a real anxiety for me. But obviously I had the script translated into English, and the film was in German, but luckily all the actors spoke English, and because we shot in the Czech Republic, we needed a set working language, which was naturally English. So everyone communicated in English. So the second you said turn over and action, everyone then started talking in German. And as long as you could understand what they were saying through just the script and, the pronunciation but at that point I'd kind of educated myself enough to really follow things. So it just became no issue whatsoever. It was absolutely fine, and the night before the first day of filming was actually the worst, where I was thinking, "Oh my God, have I conned everyone into doing this?" And then we shot the second we shot the first shot, and I understood everything that everyone was saying, and we just glided through the rest of the film, and it was lovely. And I communicated with all the cast perfectly. They've all become dear friends. I mean, really dear friends. And I would genuinely say, I can't imagine anything different, but the closest collaboration I've ever had, ironically, even though it's in a completely different language.
Yeah.
And the second we got the first take out of the way and the first setup out of the way, everything just melted away.
What was the first? Do you remember the first setup and the first take?
The first... Do you know what? That's a bloody good question.
Do you remember like how you guys started the film from like a scheduling standpoint? Like where did you shoot, like which section of the film was first and all that?
It was a bit of a... It was a lot of war stuff. It was the war stuff at the beginning because we had to go to the trenches and then redress the trenches for something else. That one. That was one of
Oh,
the first
really?
things we shot. So it was all. So yeah, that was the first day of filming. Apart from some sort of nature stuff that we shot, which was all at the very beginning of the film.
Yeah, no, I wondered about that nature stuff. The sort of connection of nature. Yeah, this kind of early.
Very first thing we shot, that big wide sunrise, Alexa 65, custom made 18.5mm lens from Arri, and
I was wondering about that. It was one of my questions was just the super wide lens stuff, which shows up in
mm,
various stages throughout the film. Is that, yeah, I wondered what lens that was.
mm.
18.5, almost like a linear, like a rectilinear sort of like, because it has some distortion, but not what you'd think an 18.5
Not that you would
to
think,
cover the
no.
full, yeah.
Yeah, it was. It was the only one in the world I was led to believe, which I'm sure it still is. I'm sure, but yeah, I had this real thing about the glass on this because when obviously, as you know, you shoot on the 65, you're used to this kind of shooting on 35mm formats. You're used to this wonderful range of glass, and then suddenly it just gets shrunk down to something that big of what you can use. And the way I embraced it all was actually down to yourself. And you may not know this, but you were teaching a ASC masterclass at the time, and I don't know if it was your first one or how, but I was an ASC member that was invited to be part of the kind of peripheral committee or whatever, and you showed some scenes from Joker and a few other things, and you were in a cinema somewhere in Los Angeles when I was sat there, and you projected on the screen your lens list.
Yeah.
And it was a little table, and it basically said Canon this, Nikon this, CP2, this.
Yes.
And I thought, bloody hell, like the Joker looked that great, like that amazing. And it was just this real sort of smorgasbord of glass.
I called it the Frankenstein set of lenses, right? It was just
yeah, exactly, yeah. And that's kind of the ethos that I kind of took. So we had the DNAs, which worked beautifully for some sequences, and then I had my set of Tribe 7s, which cover 65, and then we had a CP 3 set, which we completely detuned, and Arri did their thing with it and all this kind of stuff, and then an old Nikon thing, and then 65 S's, which we use for certain sequences, and it just turned out to be kind of this, as you say, like a Frankenstein monster of lens list. And when people say, so what glass did you use? It's like, well, how long have you got for conversation wise? Because
what
I just
C?
don't know.
That's exactly the start of the C,
Yeah.
and then we'll tell you what glass. Yeah, exactly. Well, was there a hero lens or three? We're doing very similarly on this new Joker film. We're shooting 65 again, and I have some of my repeat lenses and some Hasselblad lenses that Otto's has built for me, but it's still a Frankenstein, and but there's still like probably 4 lenses that are the go-to lenses every day.
Like 100%. Like the whole film was shot on, like, apart from those specialist shots of the sort of super wide angle. We're talking about a 27 at the widest, a 35, I think a 30, 37. A 45 or a 40 or something like that. It was really it's kind of what instinctually felt right at the time, and then some lenses reacted differently to contrast, and
for sure,
yeah.
But like a shot like this is like seems like a hero lens that you sort of lived in your sort of medium close up to close up, right?
That was a 37mm
That's the tribe.
DNA Tribe. Sorry, not
Yeah.
DNA Tribe. Tribe 7.
Yeah, only
Blackwood.
because every time you go to those odd numbers, I'm like, that's got to be the tribe
Yeah, of
because
course,
those
it's going
are
to be a
like
tribe.
exactly. I'm like, I don't
Yeah,
have a 37, but yeah, that's right. That's what made him. He made him cool because there no other lenses live in those millimeters. Exactly.
of course, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that sounds about right. The 40. It's like anamorphic, shooting 65 on that Aries sensor because you've got 4 or 5 lenses that really do the majority of the lifting on the show.
But the fall off is great. I mean, that, do you know what, that shot with the 4 boys is a really
Yeah.
lovely example because we're kind of really sort of center punching our hero, and then you kind of look at the faces around them, and they fall off nicely, not just with depth of field, but also just with the characteristics of the glass, and
Was that an easy discussion between you and Ed about
I,
what format to shoot on?
yeah, Ed and I very much speak the same language. He had never shot on large format until Your Honor, and I had, and we went into Panavision and New Orleans, and I basically shot a camera test between 35 and large format, and then screened it to him, and he was just like, well, there's just, it's just the way my brain sees, and I was like, well, it's the way my eyes and my brain work, and yeah, I just I can't imagine it ever being any different, really. And then I pitched him obviously the 65 on this, but naively kind of thinking that it would work for the majority of the picture. But my biggest learning curve was actually realizing that it doesn't work for the whole film. It works for sequences, and you've really got you've kind of got real formats for real different palettes and scenes, and weirdly, the more static stuff we kind of shot on the 65.
I would think so. Yeah. Well, and
Yeah,
all the sort of like compositional stuff with characters and people. Like I suspect this could all be 65 in this
exactly. That,
space.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
classic 65 shot. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a beautiful sequence. I love this sequence. Tell me a little bit about this sequence, only because this. First of all, the environment. This place you found, is this in the Czech Republic where you shot this?
In the Czech Republic, yeah, it's an incredible location. Nightmare of one day of just navigating that one day's space, because we had to
This whole scene one day.
the staircase, like absolutely everything, all one day.
This was all shot. So coming this whole sequence, which is an incredible sequence, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, it was a very, very, very basic. Very, I really kind of stripped my my kind of technical approach back. Just kind of one of very, like, two sources, just very, very, very simple, very, very, very simple, and.
But this sequence, because I loved coming down the stairs with these guys. Give me a little bit of this top light source. Is this the top light source that we actually get naturally from this stairwell, or did you have to enhance it or make it your own?
Massively enhance it. There was about 24 inches of glass between that and another another ceiling, and we got these wonderful balloon techs in the Czech Republic who basically sort of wedged these balloons into that space, and then filled them with helium to the point where the glass was kind of popping, and then we ignited the HMIs, and we got that. I mean, when you're actually looking up through that staircase, we're actually looking directly at the source.
There.
Yeah, we're looking directly at the source, 100%. Yeah, and this was a shot which I saw, and they were never supposed to do. They were never supposed to throw all their papers in their hats. And I said to the director, wouldn't it be lovely if we're looking up at one point? And he sort of said, well, why? And I said, well, what about the end of the end of the speech? They all just go nuts, and they just throw everything, and just got all this sort of cascading paper. And he went, yeah, great. And it was one of those shots which was very close to just not making the. It was like, well, we either make our day. And we don't know, like, how much do you love this shot? And it's actually one of my favorite, like, personally, one of my favorite shots in the film. It's not because sort of came up with it, but I just love the theme of it because it represents the sort of optimism of the.
Oh, I mean, it's such
Yeah,
an effective scene as far as just really drumming up such enthusiasm to like go to war for your country, even though,
yeah,
90% of them are going to die. And it's the most inhumane and tragic sort of, beginning for all of these characters. With such like joy. Like that's the thing I remember after this scene. They have such joy for what they're about to do.
yeah. No,
And
totally.
yeah,
I mean,
it's incredible.
yeah, it's the real sort of innocence before the and the, yeah. I mean, it's heartbreaking actually. And this was one of the last scenes we ever shot. So the whole cast had gone through the entire journey.
Really?
Yeah, because we started shooting in January or something horrible in the Czech Republic, which is just ghastly, to be perfectly honest. And we finished this in sort of April, where we wanted spring. We wanted leaves on the trees. We wanted a bit of sunshine. We wanted everything to feel a bit more
Yeah.
optimistic. So this was one of the last things we ever shot.
I mean, that must have been amazing for them, from an acting standpoint, to basically shoot the ending, shoot the beginning last, and have all that sort of history of what they've gone through. But tell me a little bit about is the fact that you shot this so quickly, right? A day for all that stuff. So you must work, fairly efficiently. And tell me a little bit about how you and Ed sort of plan out a day, because there's sequences like this, which I totally understand. It's a beautiful sort of like skylight, source and beautiful sort of simplistic lighting that, at least from my estimation, okay, in that world, you can create some compositions and work fairly efficiently and quickly. But do you guys start with a bit of just a shot list? You sort of like find this location, work together with a page turn. Tell me a little bit about your prep and how you guys work together.
So Ed's got this incredible work ethos where he basically says there's no point, and he says this very publicly as well, which I'm really proud of, but not as a DP because, I'm one of a couple of DPs that he works with, but he says there's no point of him starting to work until his cinematographer's available. And he's like, well, what's the point? Because I've just got to go and do it all over again. It was so refreshing because I come predominantly from television drama, so I'm used to working at a pace which is horrible for us all, because basically the only reason I say that is because even though we've done some lovely stuff over the years, I like to think, but it just reminds me of constant compromise and not refining. It just reminds me of compromise. But it was one of these real luxury things that occurred or happened because of COVID. And he basically said, well, just get James on as early as humanly possible. And he flew me out from London to Berlin and put me in this hotel near his house. And he would come and visit me every single morning at 8 a.m. and would leave at 8 p.m. And we would sit down and we would just do a page turn. And the way our brains work, this is one of the reasons why we get on so well, is we think of a scene in edits. So we don't just go, there's a wide shot and there's a close up and there's an answering shot and there's a mid shot and blah blah blah. We kind of go, well, that sequence, for example, that we touched upon earlier with the graves going in and then the boots all being thrown.
Yes.
For all of this, we were like, right, well, there's a top shot on the truck and then the body being thrown down and and then the boots being thrown towards camera and then the line being thrown towards the coffins and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
We meticulously sort of shot listed and not necessarily storyboarded everything, but we shot listed it all. And we wanted to kind of take the audience through that journey. So over the course of 6 weeks or whatever, we shortlisted basically the entire picture, but we didn't have any bloody locations at that point. So we then went and scouted a load of locations, approved a load of locations, and then redid the process sort of in our own time as we were prepping, and just augmented it and shaped our current list to how it would work in that place. And the only other time I've ever worked like that was with Ed on Your Honor. And we had a lot more free access to locations. So I think this was quite luxurious, this process. But we very much do it together, and we've storyboarded and shotlisted everything. We've put it all up on our wall in our office or in the apartment or wherever, or the hotel room. And it was really gratifying to see the edit come together, especially in the battle sequences.
Yeah,
as lean as humanly possible.
One of the things that I was struck with, and I'm always struck whenever I do these interviews, but it's the first thing that, happens when I touch on a film, is what are the things that sort of scare you when you're approaching the film, and what are the things that feel the most daunting, and sometimes it's the things that don't scare you that are the most daunting when you go to make them, and vice versa. But the battle sequences, particularly how many films have played with war, right? War is probably one of the most tried, it's one of the sort of landscapes in which filmmaking has gone into in the history of filmmaking. And obviously this comes from a great source material and a film from the 1930 that was, very highly lauded, and people have tried to tackle it in light of 1917 and some other films that preceded All Quiet. Yeah, what was the process of sort of saying, okay, what's going to be our language, and what drives, besides, like you said before, authenticity, and sort of maybe just trying to capture, like, what was, without putting words in there, what was sort of the intent that you guys had more conversations about in terms of what you wanted to execute and the emotional sort of journey you wanted to take the audience through?
I mean, I think you've definitely touched upon a lot of the anxieties of it. I read the book at school, and when you're as sort of susceptible as a student, reading about the Great War that your great grandfather fought in, there is definitely a sense of responsibility. And then the piece of literature, which in its own right is completely coveted and really needed to be sort of dealt with the greatest respect. That was my first my first real anxiety, I suppose. And then the scale of it doesn't really, or didn't really worry me, because one thing I've learned about filmmaking over the years is that it doesn't matter if you've got 2 people in the room or 200 people or 2,000 people. It's all about the kind of core things, of the core disciplines of what you do, which kind of make it. And as long as every department adheres to that, then you normally get good or okay stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought there were a few practical things in this picture which worried me, and one of them was the set. And we did a lot of location scouting, and we saw about 4 or 5 different candidates of the main battlefield. And I mean, there were many locations, and some of them were at angles like 45-degree angles. Some of them, all over the place. And we found this place called Milivica, which, to be perfectly honest, Ed, the director, who's a genius, he immediately disliked it. He just did not like. He just hated it, because it was an old Soviet airbase. 2 runways, and this was the ground in between 2 runways, which is laser flat. And for aviation purposes, was built south-facing. So you've
Mm-hmm.
got sunrises over there, sets over there, and for me, it's like a cinematographer's wet dream, because you can basically get access all the way around it, and you can predict where the sun's going to go, and it took a bit of exercising with myself and the designer and to kind of convince him this is the place to go, and the topography of this place we're just going to have to create. And a lot of the other locations we went to, it was already there. There was this big undulating kind of scenery. And I think it's because we both come from independent filmmaking. We kind of always go to, what's naturally there already. But I had to retrofit it into how can we take a completely blank canvas and turn it into our own. And luckily, the designer was completely on board. And the whole battlefield was a 3-walled set.
And this is, just so I can get my bearings, this opening sequence is 1914. Are you are you basically redoing that? I mean, there's the major battlefield, these sequences in here,
It's
the
all
first,
the same place. Yeah.
That you just are basically, gotcha.
Yeah, just completely rehashing the same place.
Well, and of course, in the history of the battle, they only actually gain a couple hundred yards, so it's exactly that. They're basically fighting over the same piece of dirt for a long, long time.
Exactly. But also, it's muddy. It's a muddy ground over muddy ground. So
Right.
there's a certain sort of license of redressing certain things, But the whole thing was a 3-walled set, and I basically, for my own sanity and just to sleep at night, I had to build it in a kind of 3D model with the art department and program the lenses in to make sure that I was always shooting slightly south.
Yep.
For light, but I was never going to see the left-hand side of frame if you're looking east, or the west-hand side of frame if you're looking west. Left-hand side, yeah. Because we put the whole unit there, all the trailers, all the catering, absolutely everything, and it was a huge undertaking to put all of that infrastructure in that had to be decided sort of months beforehand. And I'm kind of going, yeah, it'll be fine. And I didn't know if it was going to be fine. I was just I just knew that selfishly, I never wanted to look that direction because it was front lit.
Yes, of course.
We got away with the whole thing. And yeah, that was my massive anxiety. And then also moving the camera through this space, which I genuinely didn't know how to do. And we tested wire cams. Myself and my operator went to Berlin, and there was just no finesse to it. If you're doing a huge tracking shot all the way across the battlefield, it's like the perfect tool, or an aerial cam or something like that. It was great, but if you want to do finesse work, it just wasn't right.
Well, there's specifically, just to jump into a specific, because this shot, which is it's not that long a shot, but it was one of these questions I said, which is, and I'll play it here for just 10 seconds, but is it's covering a lot of real estate,
Yeah. I mean, we're running out of extras.
Yeah, well, that was the other question I had. So my big thing was real estate, physical, numbers of yards that you had to populate with both people and to be able to travel these shots. What were some of those things? In the largest piece of real estate, what are you talking about?
Oh, I mean, you're talking about like hundreds of meters, really. But you've only got a finite amount of extras, and then so by the time you go onto an LF sensor with a 27mm lens, you run out of people really, really, really quickly. And we had days where we had sort of 400 extras being made up, and we were like, yeah, we've got 400 extras, and then suddenly you say action, and they all run across the battle, and suddenly the first part of the shot is full of people, and the last part of the shot is just completely dead, and you're like, what happened to all the extras? And like, that was all of them. And you're just like, what? This. So it really enables you to re-navigate your your company. I mean, it's great, and that's what prep is for, I suppose.
But even with that, this happens to me all the time. It's like you still run up one against budgets, things, and those are real. There's no way to get around that. And how do you represent like what If 400 people, by the way, it's in 2023. 400 people is a lot. Like
yeah,
back maybe when they did Lawrence of Arabia, you could get 2,000 people or someone like that doesn't really exist. Not in certainly the movies that I've done so far. Like
yeah. I mean, I suppose that's the wonderful thing about working in the Czech Republic is that the currency goes a little bit further, but they're still incredible human beings which need to turn up the next day and need to be costumed. They need to be made up. They need to be fed. They need to be trained, and these guys and girls really made the film. I mean, they were incredible, like absolutely incredible, and also some of them that had never really kind of worked in an action environment before, and they've got air mortars going off, in the proximity to them, and they're running for their lives, and then you just need to say and do it all over again, and do it all over again, and do it all over again, and it was brilliant. It was actually that was one of the most rewarding aspects of the entire production, is the fact that you really felt like this kind of community that you didn't know, because everyone's wearing masks and you're all in a bubble, but you would still turn up at the end of the day, the next day, and everyone would still have the same sort of energy and passion for it all.
Yeah.
And I don't say many good things came from COVID at all, but I learned a lot from working in COVID, and this was definitely one of those things, really.
Well, just going back to the shot for a second, since we were on it. So what was the tool that got you a shot like this? Is it just like a four-wheel drive vehicle with an arm?
No, not at all. We went through all of these things. We tested absolutely everything under the sun. And I was convinced we needed Russian arms and all this kind of stuff. And then it became very apparent that we just couldn't do it. And we built roads in the set, at least, but just for people to run in, for mantronic people to run in, or run, with the camera, because the environment was just so bad for the crew and the cast. Because no one wants to watch a cast member just struggle and struggle and struggle. You've still got to hit those points in the scene, and we landed on we had a 6x6 vehicle which we did use occasionally for certain shots, but we landed time and time again on a Stabilize or sort of Ronin type gimbal,
right, sure.
Where we would just mount an LF to it and we would just run with it with two grips. And the brilliance of that piece of equipment is the range of it. So we could still operate, and for we couldn't even see the actors, but we could see it on the monitor, and we were cueing things, and it was, the video signal will run out before the signal of the head would run out because of the
distance you can travel. Yeah. Well, there you go.
And it's but I thought that we needed these sort of sprung-loaded arms on 6x6 vehicles and all this kind of stuff. And actually, the best results we ever got was just two grips running with a scaff bar tube, and just run with it and just maneuver with the actor. And it was very mantronic. It was very instinctual, which was great. It was just absolutely great because every single piece of kit you mount the camera to is just another thing that kind of go wrong or can go wrong, that needs to react mechanically and timing wise, and it was great. It was a lovely experience, actually.
Yeah, well, that there you go. That still is tried and true and works, beautifully well. One question I had, which I wondered if this was part of your conversations, which is camera movement, handheld versus cranes. One of the things I appreciated, because I like this just aesthetically myself, is the mix. and that you could go from these like really sort of like slow and brooding, lyrical camera moves, just straight and linear, and right into a handheld scene and back again, right? And like one of them, I mean, even something like him being pulled out of the rubble in the beginning is an example of like coming out of like a massive sequence, this crane shot, but then it comes right back into sort of the intimacy and the ground level kind of storytelling that it exists throughout the film. Was that something you guys talked specifically about, or was it just the style of like, let's do a dolly move here, but then when he takes the tags off of his friend with the glasses, we're going to go handheld and on both sides of the cover?
A real mixture of both. Ed and I have always been a huge believer of like whoever 20 years ago turned around to me and said that you can't cut a handheld shot to a dolly shot or a Steadicam shot, and I kind of believed them, and I took that, I adopted that as a process for however long until I kind of mixed it and then went, well, actually, it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Whoever said that is, they're chatting bullshit, and because what it allowed me to do was just realize that there's instincts for everything, and we kind of just follow our instincts. And if you're going to rely on a crane shot that takes you out of that space and removes you from that person, and then you suddenly want to cut into that person's space, just think about what is the visual grammar which it articulates that the best. And it may be handheld, it may be whatever, I don't know. And you just rely on your natural instincts, and that's just what it is. And we've relied on it, and I don't know if it works, but it works for me.
It worked for me. I mean, of course, because I would do similar, but like, yeah, it worked for me, and I was really it was noteworthy to me because obviously every time I'm in the process of making a film, and I'm in one now, I'm always asking those same questions as if I've never learned anything, because I still wonder, and we still have those conversations on set, and then we do it, and we're like, of course, that's exactly what it is.
When we start having those conversations on set, it becomes boring. I think it's like what's the point? Because it keeps us fresh, it keeps us on our toes, and it also keeps you when you're lying there at night and you're kind of going, did I make the right decision? Did I make the right decision? And then you watch the dailies and you kind of go, oh, did I make the right decision? And then you see the assembly and you kind of go, yeah, well, I did make the right decision. Or alternatively, well, I didn't make the right decision. And it's like that's what keeps us alive as filmmakers, because there's no right, there's no wrong. There's, it's just taste, I suppose. And
yeah, the weekends are a killer for me because that's when I have enough time to really rethink about everything I did in the previous 5 days. By the time you get to the next day, you're already moved on, but the weekends are when I rehash them all. Yeah, exactly. I'm in the thick of it now. Wait, I want to jump into just a couple. I made it just because I wanted to hit a couple things that just were some of my favorite moments and just talk about how you beat it. This is like a very small moment, but I just remember thinking there were a couple of things I thought. I'll let you sort of describe it, but this little transport vehicles coming in with their headlights on, and then one by one they turn their headlights off. But yeah, tell me a little bit about it.
So this was the first time I ever used the Tribe Sevens, and I was like, we need them for this shot because I need to work in like ridiculously low light. And I said to the picture vehicles guys, I was like, beef up all the headlights because I want to get a real lovely exposure in the sky. And they said that they were like, yeah, that's fine. And then like on the day, it being kind of the Czech Republic, even though everyone was brilliant, they were like, yeah, we didn't manage to beef up all the headlights. They're just these crappy little, and I was like, oh my god, how are we going to do this? So I put the I put the Tribe Sevens on, and I was on the Alexa, which was great, and I went wide open on and looked at one of the headlights, and it kind of you saw the iris do this, this weird shape, and I was like, oh shit, I think I've just done myself out of 20 minutes worth of natural daylight, because I don't want the bokeh of the highlights to kind of turn into this weird distorted shape. So I closed down like a third of a stop, and then they turned into this really nice shape that I love them to be, and we shot 2 cameras for that sequence, and I was behind one. I was behind. I was behind both of them. I was literally behind. I ran backwards and forwards. There's one where it's going across the frame. That was one camera, and I was behind this camera when we were turning, we had 5-6 vehicles, and the whole idea is they're going closer to the front lines. They're supposed to be turning their headlights off so they can't be detected by the enemy, and we shot the scene where they're going through the frame, and that shot where they're coming towards camera.
Yes.
At the same time, and we timed it with the light, so we had this incredible quality of light in the sky. This was one of those scenes which was like a hangover in the schedule every single bloody day, and it was like poor man's process. A couple of Asteras rigged in the truck, and poor man's actually we did just drive down the road, and we got a car or one of the picture vehicles in the background, and what I did is I rigged a smoke machine on the back of this vehicle to just fog out the background, so wherever we went there was this constant fog.
That's fantastic.
And then just got them just to turn the headlights off.
No,
and
I loved it.
When we were on this shot, I had a sky panel rigged with a little generator on the truck behind that basically I just turned off on the head.
Oh, that's awesome.
That was just lit by I mean, very, very, very simple stuff. If you break it down, it's basically, it sounds complicated, but it's not. It's like the most easiest. I'm doing a job at the moment which is like green screen effects, animatronics, like huge, and but this was basically going back to real bare basics. But that's what's great about it, and that's what I love about it. Actually, it's one of my favorite films because of that.
I love that shot. Well, it's like, all right. So wait, I have another question, just because I know eventually we'll run out of time, and I want to hit on some of them. I started noticing, like, you guys rarely ever rack focus, even when it's like you're in a position in which I'm going, well, it's going to start in a shot like this and then rack, and this is just one of many. But tell me a little bit about that, because I started noticing it throughout the film and thought, God, I'm not sure I've ever seen a rack focus in this outside of like literally like a basic little ones, but not like here you'd expect maybe perhaps the rack from here. Instead, it just makes the hard cut to a new shot. Tell me, is that something that is just part of Ed and yours sort of thing, or is it something you talked about, or is it something that just you hate rack focuses? I don't know what
I find focus pulls quite distracting.
Yeah.
Unless they're in a moment, and they're if you've got someone talking over here and you've got someone in the background, and they say a line, and I turn to them, and you pull focus, or alternatively, if it's very much on the move and it feels very organic to the point where the audience won't notice it, then that's one thing. But if a character is extremely still and you pull focus to someone in the background, it's a real conscious shift of focus of the audience, and it's just not something that we really wanted to do. So we designed it to be done in the edit, and so we were very, very, very conscious of that. And as you know, when you're shooting on large format, you've shot on the 65 and large format. It's almost a greater tool with focus than it is on 35mm formats, because you have to be so selective. And when you pull focus, it's a real statement. You know, as a DP, I think you need to be even more aware of how you're gonna, where you're gonna put the audience's eye.
Yeah, of course.
And it just didn't feel like it was the grammar of the film. So we decided it would be more of an editorial decision than an in-camera decision. And when
Yeah,
we did
I
it in camera,
appreciated it. Yeah,
it was much more when the camera was on the shoulder and was running around, and
that's right.
and it felt like the camera was the camera was deciding where the focus should be, opposed to where the audience should decide where the focus should be, if that makes sense.
Yes, yeah, for sure. Well, because even, I mean, this was more of like a traditional over scene, but I also noticed just how beautiful it was, this foreground choice of that's the person in this sort of these spread overs that are, I think they're part of this. I could find it in the piece because it's a short clip, um, but like those overs there when they're.
I mean, to the point where we played it with it almost too. That was one of those sequences where I felt like we played with it almost too strongly, because when they turned, it was like, well, which eyelash do you want sharp? And I kind of thought, Jesus, should I have just given it an extra half stop or maybe even 2 stops more? Because when he turns here,
That was the one that I noticed so much, because I went, wow, that's a traditional time in which the focus puller would go, you sure you don't want me to go? Like here,
we were really, I mean, it almost looks like a diopter shot because it's so shallow. But that was the point where I felt like, because the focus was just on him, I felt like as a DP that I had cocked up a little bit, because I should have just given it a little bit more stop, just so he's working within that depth of field, and the focus puller shouldn't have gone, or not shouldn't have, he should have gone with him, or she should have gone with him. But I felt like that was actually one of my mistakes, to be perfectly honest.
But what do you reckon? Like on a shot like that, what do you think you were living in? 2.8 or more wide open than that?
No, I'm pretty conservative when working in 65mm formats. Like I treat it like anamorphic. Like there are points where the image can be uncosmetically soft.
Yes.
And I never want the audience to look at the picture and kind of go, my eye is struggling. I want their eye to relax and know where to go. And the first time I ever experienced that was when I started shooting anamorphic. And then when you start shooting large format and then 65, even though it's spherical, you still need to be respectful of that. I never want the audience to really struggle. But I did, on the film I did work at, on 65, I definitely worked at 2.8 at some points. But it just depends where the lens is working, at what distance, and what the shot is. As you know, it can be a big wide, and you can work at those stops, and it'd be fine. But you don't want the focus puller to be doing that, because it can be equally as destructive.
Yeah. Let me touch on just one little thing, because I know we both. I got to get back to pre-lighting. Don't tell them I'm doing this. Interiors, right? So you're working in a world in which it's 1917. It's a period film. 1917, 1918, that sort of world of World War I. When you attract these interior scenes like this one with this chancellor, what is I suspect you start with practicals, work your way from there. Obviously, you have a lighting background, but do you enhance these practicals above the frame line? With is this a set? Give me a little bit of insight into a set like this or a scene like this.
So this was a period building where we couldn't do anything to it whatsoever. We were just not allowed to do anything, and the lights that were in shot were kind of built into the wall, but we weren't allowed to screw into the wall. So we had to work really closely with the art department, and they are flames, they're candles. And what we did here was we put steerers up above the frame, and with the magic of the the lighting grips, were enabled to sort of put them up there, and we put the DOP choice egg crates on them, so we and sort of chimera type fixtures, so we could spread the light and make it a bit more cosmetic with a bit of atmos. But and also for some of the other wides, we actually all the ceilings were all listed, so we weren't allowed to do anything to them at all. So we actually had balloons made with LED fixtures in them that were really shallow, really shallow, just to give us a bit of ambient. And then the rest was, I always like light in actors' eyes, even if the light is motivated elsewhere. In this case, it's motivated by fire or candle. So it was kind of easy because I could just put something on the floor with, through a sort of 6x6 frame, like magic frame or grid frame or shower curtain or something like that, which enabled us just to sort of bend it in their eyes. But it just very, I mean, there's a frame. There you go, that one. This is a frame that, or a scene that I was actually very proud of, talking about that sequence, because the big wide shot, we built a balloon for this.
It's a beautiful frame.
Yeah. So we couldn't have achieved this shot without going on the 65, because there was a wall directly behind the camera, and we stripped the camera down to the point where it could not get any further back.
Pull the battery, pull the ShotDeck, pull it all.
We've all been there, right? Strip everything back, and you're like, and let's get it as square to the. And also, I'm trying to bring the table, as you would know, trying to bring the table as close towards camera as possible to try and get as much backlight as possible, so it's not flat and not toppy. And we had a balloon built for this set. And then, these sort of fixtures we had put on the wall with candlelight, but as you can see, the color temperatures, it doesn't quite match on the skin tone. The background's warmer than the skin tone, but we didn't want it to go sort of mental,
So and what is this? This is not the 18 or this? No, because
this was the 18.5.
It is. God, I don't know this lens. I feel like I'm 60 days into shooting, and I should have had this lens.
Oh yeah, we're talk to the team at Harry, because it does exist, but it's quite slow. Like, I think it's like a 4.5, or like slow in what we would call slow, because some DPs are like, oh my god, that's not slow. That you should try. These, but it's a great. It is a great lens, but we had to work in quite high stops, but also with candlelight, as we all know. Candlelight overexposes really quickly because of the nature of what it is. So it enabled us to get nice shape on the flames and everything, but also it meant that the balloon that we had to put in the ceiling had to be really beefed up, because we couldn't achieve it any other way. And we put Atmos in, and then suddenly you could see the balloon and blah, blah, blah. So,
I can't believe this 18 mil is so. It's like it truly is beautifully sort of rectilinear. Like it has. So, that would be a perfect giveaway shot, even on a 25 or a 28 anamorphic. First of all, the sharpness on the edges would be so poor that it would be hard to get a shot like this. But you're right. Maybe that's why it's truly like a 65 shot.
Yeah, it's, an extraordinary piece of sort of optical engineering, if I may say so.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, it really is.
All right, listen, we're going to wrap it up, but I want to ask the one question, which is, what was your sort of, when you look back at this experience, besides first of all, I asked you two-part. One is about the film, and one is just about your experience post-film. The first one about the film is, what was, when you look back on it, the thing that you're sort of most proud of, in the sense of a challenge that you overcame, or something you learned the most about in approaching the film? Like, was it the chances you took, or some things you shifted differently than you maybe had done before this?
I mean, it's a relatively sort of young cinematographer. I mean, I'm still in my 30s. So looking back at it all, it was brilliant. It was the most sort of collaborative experience that I've had, and also a director that just went headfirst into kind of my belief in the film. So when I said, look, I want to do this, there was not a lot of resistance, or there was a lot of dialogue. There was no. There was no yes. There was no no. There was like why. So we always had to kind of answer each other's questions. A couple of things actually, right? There's a couple of frames here. I'll speak briefly about one.
Oh, great.
If you go up, see the one where your cursor's on at the moment?
Yes.
That one. That was a camera test that I shot.
Oh, interesting.
That was this was a camera test that I shot by myself. I hate to even say it, but I don't even know if the director, I'm sure he was there, but he may not have been there. But this is all I said is I want a flare and the special effects team to light the smoke. So these were camera tests, and they made it in the final edit. So that's why there's such a huge colour shift between this and what it's intercut with, because this is super warm, and the scene that it's cut with is actually lit by moonlight, right? And when I saw it in the edit, I was like, oh God, I don't know if I can fix that, because it's so big. So we just decided to embrace it. And the other one was as you can see here, there's because I've got 18K Arimaxes either side of this battlefield, backlighting the smoke for separation.
Yeah, here, let me find that clip. This one here for the night trenches scene, right? This one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering about. Yeah, so talk us through. Yeah, because this was incredible.
Yeah, because I mean, luckily you've got these flares that do give off a huge amount of light, but in this proximity, not that amount. And when the flares kind of die out, we needed a sort of base colour, which I've got a real hatred of blue moonlight, but it felt right for this because I wanted the flares to feel alien. So, but when we cut to them, to be perfectly honest, they're camera tests, they're lighting tests, and they made it in the movie, and because I didn't want to deliver shit lighting tests or camera or flare tests. I wanted them to be in the context of what we were filming. So, but they were obviously good enough that everyone thought that they should make it in the film, and they did. And it's a weird sort of lesson how these things can kind of bite you in the arse a little bit, because they're so variant in color.
But also, it's the beauty of like treating, a test is a test for a reason, right? And so it's where you have an opportunity to experiment and really try something and see if something's going to work, right? And then when you see a test, you realize, well, that's the risk I should be taking every day, because when you're doing a test, you're not thinking about its success. You're thinking probably more about its potential failure. But if you live on that edge, then that's like that's probably where you want to be for the whole film,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I suppose and the other thing was the scene where Kat is stood at the farm gate, and it starts to snow.
Oh my God, I love that shot.
We saw it on the day, and I was like, oh my God, look at that. And we lined it up and we shot it. And we shot half the scene, and then it stopped snowing. And we didn't know what to do, because we all fell in love with it so much. And it was real testament to the producers, because the producers basically said, well, we'll get Snow Business, which is a company that specialises in fake snow in England and Europe, to come in and snow the half this valley down. and we shot the scene, all the major shots where it was snowing. We shot in in snowfall, and then the rest of it it stopped snowing, and we kind of got away with it. But we had this enormous continuity issue.
Yeah,
So
that's
this was all real
incredible.
snow, and this was us just going, grab the camera, just shoot, and it poetically it just worked so beautifully for this sequence.
I mean, I put it right in my top 20 favorites.
So I grabbed the camera, we put it there, and we framed for the gate and put him off to one side. And it's my favourite shot of the entire film, but it was a happy accident. It was just a total happy accident.
It's
And it was one
beautiful.
of those lightning in a bottle moments that you get. But then all the scenes after that, we had to snow the entire. We had to snow the farm down. We had to snow down all the sort of local ground to make it work. And there was a real conversation where people were saying, "Well, do we reshoot it? Without snow?" And we were like, "Well, we can do, but we don't want to." And look at this. And I've worked with many producers that would have gone, "Well, no, we need to reshoot it without snow." And luckily, we were working with real artists who sort of said, "No, we're gonna get trucks of fake snow in overnight whilst you guys are sleeping, and we're gonna hose this valley down as much as we can with foam, and we're gonna pick it up again tomorrow," which we did, and we got away with it. And
Well, as somebody who doesn't know any of that backstory, it was one of my favorite moments in the movie as well.
oh, thank you.
And one of my one beautiful image where it sits emotionally for his character, for where we are in the story. Yeah, it had that impact, so it was well worth it for sure. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
All right, last question. All right, so you're winning awards and all these things. You're about to go to the Academy Awards. I know personally for me, who always, as you spoke earlier when we first started about how movies had such an impact, the Academy Awards had that to me, and I would watch it every year as like, not because the awards, but a celebration of film and this sort of dream aspect of it. What was it like? What has it been like to both be nominated, winning some of these amazing awards like the BSC and BAFTAs and stuff? Like, has it been fun? Has it been overwhelming? Is it like, tell me, because I had a beautiful experience. I loved every minute of it, even though I lost every time to Deacons. There are worse things to be said, and every part of it was joyful. But I know for some it can be stressful.
No, I mean, I've grown up with, everyone that's been nominated in the category that I'm sort of honoured to be part of. That the cameramen and women, these incredible artists. I've grown up with their work, and I've used their work as sort of inspiration for years, and weirdly, almost coming on to sort of decades now, and they're my heroes. I mean, they really are these guys. Mandy, Roger, Claudio. Like so just. Florian. They're incredible at what they do, and I'm honoured to call some of them friends and colleagues, and and to be mentioned in the same sentence as these individuals is one of the most sort of humbling, sobering, sort of moments of my life, of my career. So I can't really articulate what it's like, and I never expect. We don't make films to win awards. We make films to tell stories. And when you get nominated for something like this, and then especially alongside these people, yeah, I still can't really comprehend and compute it. And then to win something was just totally yeah, I mean, Jesus Christ, I don't even know. I don't even know how to talk about it. I mean, it's amazing. It's just absolutely amazing because some of these people that are nominated in these categories are the reason I became a cinematographer in the first place. So to be mentioned along, even the fact that these people know my name is like unbelievably humbling. Like the fact that they even know I exist, let alone nominated in a category amongst them, is huge. And yeah, it's I watch the BAFTAs every year, and then I would even when I was shooting, I would stay up till the crazy hours because I used to live in London, or occasionally still do. Um, I'd watch the Academy Awards and the Oscars, and stay up till sort of 3 a.m. and to watch them all, and then get a couple of hours sleep, and sometimes just go on to set because it was a real sort of roller coaster, and it is a real celebration of what film is all about. Even though it's it means different things to different people and all this kind of stuff, but to me it harps back to that good old fashioned real celebration of Hollywood and storytelling of with the magic of what I grew up with. And yeah,
Yeah.
to be nominated for an Academy Award is sort of what dreams are made of. I mean, I wake up every morning and I kind of go about my day, and then I'm like, Jesus, that actually happened. That happened. Did that happen? And
It's
it took a
happening.
few. Well, happening, yeah. And it, and it
Happening.
and it took me days and weeks actually, where sometimes quietly I'd be sort of going to work or whatever, and I would have that sort of spare 5 minutes where I'm not looking at the work of the day or whatever, and I would check my phone, and I would have to go on the Academy website and see your name up there, and you go, oh my God, it's real, it's real, it's real, it's real, it is real. It's not some weird surreal dream. It's not, yeah, I mean, it's a huge honour, and I can't
Yeah.
articulate it any more than that. But it is a huge honour, and to be perfectly honest, it's overwhelming. It's completely overwhelming. Yeah, and
Wow.
yeah.
It's well deserved, and enjoy it. You still got a couple more to go, and I'll see you next week at the ASC, and I'll bring a
Yeah.
hat. We got orange, we got black, and we got pink. You name, we'll mix it.
I'll let you choose. You're a man of great taste.
All right. Well, this was excellent. I appreciate how candid you were, and all the stuff you shared about this wonderful film, and it's well deserved. It's going to serve as inspiration. It was inspiring watching it when it came out, and it was inspiring rewatching it for this, and it gave me even inspiration for the next 25 days of Joker 2 that I still am shooting. So,
Oh,
I'll probably crib a bit of it, find its way into the film. I'll try to get that 18 for the last couple of weeks.
oh, please do. Honestly, if you need a contact, honestly, I'll hound them because it's a great lens. Honestly, it's
There you go.
because the fact that your film genuinely, like, I can genuinely say that a bit of Larry Sher and a bit of Joker lens list that I learned at the ASC masterclass as a one of the ambassadors. I learned that, and seeing your lens list on that cinema screen, I thought, wow. So it's amazing how we all have wonderful crossovers from each other, and you're an inspiration. And
Oh,
thank
thanks.
you,
Well,
Larry, for
that's what this
letting me
is
be.
about. This is why we have these things, and this is what ShotDeck's here for as well, which is just to share information and inspire. So there we go. All right.
Good.
Well, everyone out there, we'll drop this with all the stills from the film from All Quiet on the Western Front. And if you haven't seen it, it's on Netflix, and it's amazing. And if you have seen it, watch it again because it's also it really you'll find all types of new things like the rack focus thing that I noticed in the second viewing. Anyway, all right. Thank you, James. Good luck on your shoot, and I'll see you soon.